I am not used to using one of these. I'm not the speaker in our family, but I do first want to tell the people that prepared the meal, it was delicious. So coming from Texas, we have stuffed ourselves with seafood, and we're going to go home maybe, 5 or 10 pounds lighter. We even have a friend from Minnesota, and so we have given her the tour. We have stuffed her with seafood, and I just want to compliment the people that prepared tonight. I love the way it looks in here, and I want to thank y'all all for coming. How many of you have ever been to any kind of pro-life event before? Oh, super, super. And how long has the Right to Life here been going on? Okay, all right. Well, that's good then. I think it's a great turnout. So I do thank you for coming. So knowing that I'm Abby's mom, I've known her for an awfully long time. And, people ask me, say, if you had to describe Abby, what are some of the words you would use? And first and foremost, she's beautiful outside, more importantly on the inside. Stubborn. She's stubborn, but she's compassionate. She is strong-willed. And Dr. Dobson's Strong-Willed Child was probably the first book that I bought after she got here, and probably when she was less than a year old. And I have a younger brother that had a child like that. So in trying to encourage him, I kept saying, well, the good thing about it, as they get older, they think for themselves pretty good. So, it'll be okay. All he told me was he's got 2 daughters. He said, well, if we had had her first, we wouldn't have had any more. And by the way, Abby is my only one, so that may tell you something. Yes, she's strong-willed, but she's also passionate. She's very outspoken, very giving, probably giving to a fault. She's hardworking, and she's a very good friend. And on the note of the friend, the other day we were talking, and she's got a friend from Kansas, and I had seen on Facebook where her husband was home from Afghanistan, and they were getting ready to move. And so I asked her about it and where they were going. She said, are you friends with Jessica? And I said, yeah, I don't have as many friends as you do, so I just friend all of your friends. And that way I may learn more about Abby, through her friends. So anyway, in all seriousness, I don't know if you know her story. I don't know if you've read her book. If you haven't, I'm not trying to sell that, but I'm just saying it's a testimony, and it just tells about her journey from very young to through her time at Planned Parenthood. And people have asked me, how were you and your husband ever, pro-choice? And I said no. But at the time she was growing up, it wasn't a topic. It wasn't a hot topic. It just wasn't something you sat around and discussed and talked about. But I just pray that as you listen tonight, that you take away from here, there'll be some things that she'll share that may shock you, may, surprise you. But I think the most important thing is just learning about the truth of the abortion industry. And it's real important that we all educate ourselves. I've learned more about it since she left Planned Parenthood. It wasn't a topic that she and I discussed. We kept our conversations about her job very surface, very generic. I was not willing to jeopardize our relationship over where she worked. And my husband just kept reminding me that we just continued to pray, pray, pray. And I'll admit there were times I just gave up on it. I said, she's climbing the ladder, and they are preparing her for that. But he really never lost faith, never lost hope. And so the day she left was just a great day for us. But I just ask you to listen, and I think education is the most important thing that we all learn in the pro-life movement. And I know that just in her journey and watching her in the 6 years she's been gone, has caused me to be more compassionate, has caused me to be less judgmental. I think that it also was just a trickle-down effect that 4 years ago I was part of a group that opened a pregnancy center in the small town where I live. And I never thought that's what I would be doing right now in my life. But, you know the saying, if you haven't walked in someone else's shoes, it has become to mean so much to me in these years, because that is absolutely true. And we have to not judge other people, because we never know what got them to the decisions they've made or the places they've gone. So I just ask that you listen, and I hope that you take away some good things tonight, and that you continue to be involved in the pro-life movement. If you know where pregnancy centers are and you live close enough, they're always needing volunteers. First and foremost is always prayer. You know, there are some troubled young women that come into pregnancy centers, and many, like we talk about at our place, you know, we don't even know of the life that they've lived and where they've come from. So many of them are so sad. So praying and keeping communication with these young women is just so important. So anyway, your involvement is very important, and I want to thank you again for being here tonight. And please welcome my daughter, Abby Johnson.
Well, I do live in Texas now, so howdy. It is really such an honor to be here with all of you tonight. You know, I've lived in Texas for a long time, but when people ask where I'm from, I always say I'm from South Louisiana, because this does feel like my home. And I was just really excited to be asked to come here, and really excited to share my story. I do live now in Austin, Texas with my husband and our 5 children. I know. We have a 9-year-old daughter who's with me tonight, Grace, and then we have 4 boys. They are 3, 2, 1.5, and almost 1. And I know. We tell people we became pro-life and we couldn't stop breeding. But anyway, people say, "Oh my gosh, you move really fast," and we do. But our youngest son is actually adopted. It was just sort of a crazy situation. A friend of mine is a sign language interpreter in Maryland, and she interprets for a woman who is deaf in her church. And she had put in this Facebook group that I'm in, there's about 30 women in it, and we're all really good friends, and she said, you know, I interpret for this woman, and she is pregnant, and she is, it was a very difficult situation how she got pregnant, and she said she wants to place her baby for adoption, and she had an adoptive family. But 2 weeks before this woman's due date, the adoptive family called and said, you know, since there's a possibility that your baby could be deaf, we've decided that we don't want him. Because, you know, you always know what you're going to get when you have your own children. And so another family was called, but they didn't want him because the baby was biracial, and they wanted a white baby. And so they weren't a fit. And then so my friend put this in Facebook, and she says, you know, if anybody, please be praying for this situation. If you know anybody who might be interested in adopting this baby, let me know. And so I wrote on there, we will. And so she called me, and she said, are you serious? Because our youngest biological child was only 6 months at the time. And she said, are you sure? And I said, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've wanted to adopt, and if a baby needs a home, then yeah, we're in it. We're going to do it. And anyway, I was in Atlanta at the time, and I was traveling, and I hung up the phone with my friend, and I thought, I better call my husband. So and I thought, can I just send him a text? Because I don't really want to have that conversation over the phone. But and this actually affects him more than me, because he is a stay-at-home dad. So anyway, I did call him, and he had a panic attack for about 2 days, and but he said, he said he's such a man. He wrote a pros and cons list for why we should or shouldn't adopt this baby, and he said, Abby, he said, every time I would write a reason that we shouldn't adopt this baby. He said, I could look into the future, and every time I did, this little boy was in it. And he said, if we are really, truly pro-life, and there's a child that needs a home, then I guess our answer must be yes. And so in 2 weeks, I traded my minivan. I said I would never drive a minivan, and then I drove a minivan. Then I said I would never drive a 12-passenger van, and I now drive a 12-passenger van. So in 2 weeks, we had to trade in our minivan to a 12-passenger van. We got our home study done. If you know anything about adoption, you know that the fact that we were able to get everything done in 2 weeks is truly a miracle. But we got everything done, and we were there, and he was born, and he's just beautiful and perfect. And so when we brought him home, before we brought him home, we were trying to think, what are we going to name him? And we wanted to name him a name that started with the letter J, because the birth mother had 3 other children, and all of their names started with J. So we wanted to honor her in that way. So I'm Catholic, and I was raised Baptist. I actually was raised in First Baptist Church. My parents are like, "Oh, you're Catholic. How did that happen?" But anyway, and so I'm just waiting for him to pray me back in. No, I'm just kidding. So anyway, we went to, we were looking for names, and we always name our kid a saint name and a family name. And so I went online to saints.com or something, and clicked on the letter J, and went down the list, and looked at some names that we liked, but nothing really fit. And then at the very end, we saw St. Jude. And St. Jude is the patron saint of impossible causes. And we thought that was the perfect little name for this perfect little baby. And I think about Jude, I think about his life and the circumstances of his conception and beyond. And I just realize truly what a miracle his life is. You know what, in this society, in this day and time that we're living in now, really, any child that is born in today's society is a miracle. 1 in 3 women are having abortions in this country. Over 3,000 abortions are taking place every single day. Truly, any child that is born is a miracle. As much as I'd love to tell you, I've always stood up here and defended the right to life. That's not true. Otherwise, I wouldn't be up here. I worked at Planned Parenthood for 8 years. I was an abortion clinic director there. I got involved with Planned Parenthood when I was in college and met a woman who worked for Planned Parenthood. She had a booth there, and honestly, the only reason I even went up to her booth was because it was hot pink, and that's my favorite color. And I walked up to it, and I asked her what she was doing, who she was with, and she said she was with Planned Parenthood. And honestly, I didn't know anything about Planned Parenthood. I'd never been to a Planned Parenthood. I didn't even know what they did. I didn't know that they did abortions. And she asked me what I knew about them. I said, I really know nothing. And she said, well, that's great. She said, Planned Parenthood is here because we are, I don't know if you know this, but they are the only place that women can go if they are low income and they need health care. That's what she told me. And I thought, oh, well, that's really sweet. You would help all of these people who are uninsured. And she asked me what I thought about abortion. I told her, well, I was raised pro-life. And she said, oh, that's really good. She said, pro-lifers are good people, but they're just sort of misguided. You guys are misguided. And she said, they just don't understand that without safe and legal abortion, women would be forced to go where? The back alleys, right? And, these pro-lifers are just trying to take away our rights. They're trying to take away our rights to do with our bodies what we will. And then, what right are they going to take away next? Then next, all of a sudden, we can't vote, And then what? Then, I don't know, women can't wear pants, And I thought, well, I like pants. So I signed up right then and got involved with them. And you know what? That was it. Once I was in, that was it. You hear a lie enough times and it becomes the truth. And I heard their lies every single day. And it became my truth. I know that Satan has to sort of sneak around to do his dirty work. But I know that when God wants to change your life, it can happen like that. And that's what happened to me in September of 2009. 2009 had been a great year for me. I was really at the top of my game with Planned Parenthood. In April of 2009, I was awarded Planned Parenthood's Employee of the Year award. I know, you can hold your applause. I know you're proud of me. But I was really excited about it. And because I was their Employee of the Year, I got to attend their big national gala. And they always have a big gala. There's about 3,000 to 4,000 people there. They raise about $10 million in one night. And I had gone before, but I always had to sit way in the back, at like table 300. But this time, because I was their Employee of the Year, I got to sit at the head table with the person who was receiving Planned Parenthood's most distinguished award that they give out every year, and that's called the Margaret Sanger Circle Award. Now, do we know who Margaret Sanger is here? Well, if you don't, Margaret Sanger is the founder of Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood, her first clinic was called the American Birth Control League, and it was founded in New York in 1916, and that eventually morphed into Planned Parenthood. Margaret Sanger founded Planned Parenthood with one goal, and that was to exterminate the African American population through contraception and abortion. That was her goal. And she said things like, Negroes are human weeds who need to be exterminated from the human garden. She also said things like, the most merciful thing a large family can do to one of its infant members is to kill it. Margaret Sanger worked closely with Adolf Hitler. He loved the work that she did and praised her for the work that she did here in the United States. Currently, we see Margaret Sanger's dreams coming to fruition as in the United States now, as it stands, there are almost just as many African American babies being aborted as there are being born. And in some states, like New York, Alabama, some other states, the abortion rate in the African American population is actually higher than the birth rate. In Alabama, the abortion rate in that community is 72%. So we see her dreams coming to life right in front of our faces. 79% of abortion facilities are built in what they call super minority neighborhoods, where at least 85% of the population is minority, primarily African American. This was her dream, and it's happening. It's happening all over the country. But every year, Planned Parenthood continues to celebrate their racist roots by giving out their most distinguished award in the name of their founder, eugenist Margaret Sanger. Now, I heard not too long ago that Adolf Hitler was actually involved in the creation of Volkswagen. Okay, but they've since cut that tie, of course. But can you imagine if every year Planned Parenthood gave out an award to their employees and called it the Adolf Hitler Award? Like, people would be like burning their Volkswagens, they'd be running them off a cliff. That would be completely unacceptable. Yet every year, Planned Parenthood continues to give out an award in Margaret Sanger's name. And not just that, they name facilities after her. I mean, they they really praise her as much as they can. So this year in 2009, the person that was receiving the Margaret Sanger Circle Award was Hillary Clinton. I know you're fans. It's all right. So she and I, we had this intimate dinner, this intimate conversation, me, Hillary, and 10 Secret Servicemen. And I remember sitting at the table and just, thinking, wow, I've made it. This is who I've wanted to be. This is what I've worked so hard to receive. And I remember watching her go up to the podium and to receive her award. And she gave a speech. I don't remember what she said. I'm sure it was riveting. But I just remember thinking, it's not going to get better than this right here. I'm at the top of my game here at Planned Parenthood. That was in April of 2009. August of 2009, I had a meeting with my supervisor. We were talking about our budget for the upcoming fiscal year, 2010. And I knew that we had an abortion quota, a certain number of abortions that we had to sell to women coming in the facility, but it had never been a problem. We had always met the quota, so it wasn't really something that I thought about. But this year, I looked at the budget, and I thought that there was an error. I thought that there certainly was a typo, because I noticed that from fiscal year 2009 to fiscal year 2010, the abortion quota had doubled. And I thought, oh, that can't be right, because here at Planned Parenthood, our goal is to reduce the number of abortions. That's what I said. That's what I said to the media. That's what I said to my friends and family. No, we're not about selling abortion. We're about reducing abortions. That's truly what I believed. And so I said this out loud to my supervisor, and she started laughing at me. And she said, Abby, why would we reduce the abortion number? That's how we make our money. Now you, a group of pro-lifers, are looking at me like, well, duh. But I was genuinely shocked. And I don't remember how I justified that conversation, how I made it right in my head, but I had been justifying my life and my decisions for 8 years, and so it was pretty easy to do. But about a month later, we had a visiting physician come in from out of town, and he told me that at his own private practice abortion facility, he performed abortions a little differently than we did inside of Planned Parenthood. So Planned Parenthood receives all of their medical protocols from their main office, their main federation. That's Planned Parenthood Federation of America. So if you were to walk into a Planned Parenthood clinic for a first trimester abortion, the abortion is going to be performed the same, no matter if you walk into a clinic in St. Louis, Missouri, whether you walk into one in New York City, New York, whether you walk into one in Tampa, Florida. Their protocols are all the same. So just briefly, the way a first trimester abortion is performed in Planned Parenthood is like this. They have the woman come in, and they have her fill out a bunch of paperwork, and then she signs a bunch of stuff, and there's really no counseling involved. It's just making sure that all the papers are signed. And then she goes back into the exam room, and we usually would go ahead and sedate her for the abortion procedure, because we really didn't want her asking a lot of questions. So if she was sort of out of it, that was easiest for us. And then the technician would come over, and she would perform an ultrasound on the woman. Now, the only reason that we performed an ultrasound was to determine how far along the woman was in her pregnancy, so that we would know exactly how much to charge her for the abortion. And then the ultrasound would be moved away. Now, by the way, during the ultrasound, we never gave her the option to look at the ultrasound. We wanted to make sure that the ultrasound monitor was turned away from her so that she couldn't see it. Because you see, the ultrasound exposes the lie of the abortion industry. That it's not just a mass of tissue, it's not just a blob of cells, that this actually is a human baby. And so we wanted to be sure that we kept those images away from her. before her abortion. The doctor would come in. The woman usually didn't even know the doctor's name. She didn't know anything about him. He didn't introduce himself. He would sit down and begin the abortion procedure, and he would start inserting graduated dilation rods into her uterus, and he would do that until the uterus was about the size of a dime. And then he would insert something called a cannula. It's a suction tube. It sort of looks like a straw. It's graduated. It gets bigger depending on how far along the woman is in her pregnancy. And that cannula is hooked up to the suction machine, and that's what actually removes the baby inside the womb. And so the doctor has the suction tube, and he just blindly pokes around inside of the woman's uterus until he thinks he has enough blood and tissue in a glass jar. That glass jar goes into a lab called the POC lab. Now, POC stands for what? Products of conception. What's that? That's the baby, right? But you can't say baby inside of an abortion clinic, so we said POC or POC, or if the staff was feeling funny, they would say that it stood for pieces of children. And the POC technician would take everything in that glass jar, they would dump it into a glass baking dish, and they would reassemble the parts of the baby. Now, why did we do that? Because if we left the calvarium, the head, or a hand or a leg inside of the woman's uterus, she could develop a very serious infection that could be fatal to her. And so after that was done, the POC technician would put all of the parts of the baby into one Ziploc bag. At the end of the day, she would seal it up. She would throw it in a freezer. And then about once a week, a group like Stericycle, a biohazard medical waste company, would come to the facility, pick up the bags of babies, take them to their facility, and incinerate them like medical waste. And that's how first trimester abortions are performed in the United States, just about 3,000 times a day. And that was all I knew. That was the only way I knew them to be performed, because I had only worked at Planned Parenthood. But when this doctor from out of town came down and he was explaining that he did abortions a little differently at his own practice, he was explaining to me, I know this is going to be surprising to you, but he said that if a doctor can actually see what he's doing while he's performing an abortion, it's actually safer for the woman. I mean, I know that shouldn't be a surprise to anybody, right? I mean, if let's say you were going in to get a root canal done, and your doctor rolled up on his stool, and he put a blindfold on, and he said, you know what, I've been doing this a long time, and I've decided today for your root canal, I'm going to jazz it up, and I'm going to do it blindfolded. Would anybody still be in that chair? Of course not, right? But that's how abortions are performed. It's a blind procedure. The doctor can't even see what he's doing when he's performing the abortion. So it's no wonder that we see complications like a perforated uterus, where they take the suction tube and they poke a hole right through the woman's uterus, sometimes all the way up into the bowel, because they can't see what they're doing. So I took this information, I went back to my supervisor, and I said, look, here at Planned Parenthood, I mean, we say we are about keeping women safe. So if this is the safest type of procedure for a woman, then why aren't we doing it? Why isn't this the standard protocol inside of our facilities? And she said, because using an ultrasound during the actual abortion procedure takes about an extra 3 to 5 minutes of time. And our goal inside of Planned Parenthood was to have a woman on the table, off the table, abortion complete in 5 minutes. And so an extra 3 to 5 minutes of time, that wasn't an option for us. Abortionists are paid essentially on commission. They're paid per abortion that they perform, usually about $75 per abortion. They're trying to do anywhere between 20 and 40 abortions a day. So they just want to get in, do the abortions, and get out as quickly as possible. So I accepted that answer. I went back and talked to the doctor, and he said, if time presents itself and the right patient presents herself, then I will call you in and show you what one of these ultrasound-guided abortions looks like. And, I have to be honest, I was pretty excited about it. I thought, this is going to be a good learning opportunity for me. So the time did come. I was asked to assist in the abortion room. My job in the room was to hold the ultrasound probe on the woman's abdomen so that during the abortion, so that the doctor would be able to, in his words, visualize his target. Now, just for clarity, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a nurse. I'm not a medically trained sonographer. I'm a licensed therapist by education, so if you're having a crummy day, we can talk about it. But if you need some sort of medical procedure, I'm really not your gal. But inside the abortion industry, they don't care. You just have to be willing and sit through about an hour-long in-house training, and then they set you loose to perform invasive medical procedures on women. And I had gone through that training, so I was certainly qualified in their eyes. And so I stood there, we did the ultrasound, we found that the baby was 13 weeks along. Now, at 13 weeks, are there arms and legs? Fingers and toes? Heartbeat? Brain waves? Internal organs? Yeah, everything's there. Everything that we have a child in the womb at 12 weeks, 13 weeks also has. Outside of the womb, the baby's about this big, and we can even tell if it's a boy or a girl. And admittedly, I remember looking at the screen and feeling apprehensive because it really looked like a baby. I mean, I knew it wasn't because Planned Parenthood told me it wasn't. But strangely enough, my daughter's 9. I've only been out of the industry 6 years. And so I was pregnant with and had my daughter Grace when I worked at Planned Parenthood. Now, when I was pregnant with Grace and running Planned Parenthood, she was a baby. But she was a baby because my baby was wanted. If a baby is unwanted, then it's magically just tissue. So I stood there looking at this screen and feeling nervous, but remembering that no matter what I saw on the screen, I knew this. I knew that this baby, this tissue, this fetus, this POC, whatever we called it, was not going to feel anything. Now, how did I know that? Well, because Planned Parenthood sent me a memo about it. The memo was titled, Answers to Tough Questions. The most frequently asked question I got from someone seeking an abortion was this: will my baby feel this? You know, these women, they wanted to know. They wanted an answer. And we knew that we had to give them a clever response. So our scripted response that we were to give back to these women, that I gave back thousands of times, was no, the fetus has no sensory development or does not feel anything for 28 weeks. Now, do you believe that? No. Well, I did. I mean, I knew better, right? I mean, science tells us that that's not true. My experience told me that that wasn't true. I mean, I remember my daughter when she was like 22, 23 weeks, she'd be kicking me like crazy and I'd poke her and she'd kick me back, right? Because she could feel what was taking place inside of her home. Babies in the womb, they start sucking their thumb in the womb at 12 weeks. Why? Because they can feel it, because it makes them feel calm, because it feels good to them, because they feel. I knew it was a lie. But I had to believe the lie because the truth was far too inconvenient. So I stood there looking at the screen, reminding myself of this scripted answer, trying to reassure myself, and I watched as the suction tube, the suction wasn't yet turned on, I watched it go into the woman's uterus, and I could see it up on the screen. And I watched it as it got closer and closer to the side of this child. And when it touched his side, he jumped. And he began flailing his arms and legs as if he was trying to move away from the abortion instrument. But there was nowhere for him to go. And in just a few seconds, The doctor asked the technician to turn on the suction machine, and he said, "Beam me up, Scotty." And the suction machine was turned on, and I guess people make the assumption that what I saw next was the worst part, that seeing a child become dismembered in his mother's womb was the worst part, but I knew that was going to happen. The worst part was that when I had the opportunity to do something, to intervene on for the life of this baby, I just stood there and I did nothing. I mean, I remember wanting to sit her up and to say, look what's happening to your baby. Make them stop. But I just stood there. I didn't say anything. I stood there and I watched. And I'm a mom. What kind of mom just stands there and watches another woman's child be killed right in front of her face and does nothing? Me. I was that kind of mom. I remember looking at the screen, and in just a few seconds, the screen was black. And I knew that meant the abortion was complete. You know, I've thought about it, and I can't think of any other surgical procedure. I think that abortion is the only surgical procedure where its success is dependent on the deliberate death of another human being. After the abortion was complete, I put the ultrasound probe down. I went back into my office. I didn't know what to do. I knew that I had been lied to by Planned Parenthood, by the abortion industry, but more than that, what bothered me more was that I had in turn lied to thousands of women. You know, they came in to my clinic looking for answers, searching for answers. And I just sold them a lie. And I sat in my office, and I remember I was praying, probably for the first time in 8 years, really praying. And for 8 years of my life, there had been people who had stood outside of my abortion facility, and they were praying. They were praying for the women going into the facilities. They were praying for the men, and they were also praying for us, praying for the workers. And they had told me repeatedly that if I ever wanted to leave my job, that they would be there to help me. I never thought that would happen. But I remember sitting there that day, and I was looking out my window, and I began to pray, and I was asking God, I was like, God, show me somewhere that I can go. Show me who I can turn to during this time. And I kept feeling like God was telling me to go to these pro-lifers who had been praying for me outside of my clinic. And I thought, no, God, give me somebody else. Anybody else. But that's where I felt like I needed to go. And so I ran out the back door, and I got in my car, and I could have walked to their facility because their office was conveniently located next door. But I thought that would look suspicious, so I got in my car and drove the 50 yards and pulled into their parking lot and called them and asked if I could come in. They met me at the back door. I went into their facility, and they sat me on their couch, and I didn't know what to say. Well, what do you say? I'm sorry? I'm sorry? I've helped to facilitate over 20,000 abortions during my 8 years, and I'm real sorry about it? That didn't seem like enough. But when I sat there on their couch, there was only a few things that I could even get out of my mouth. One was that I had been wrong, and that they had been right, that I needed their help, and that I was so, so desperately sorry. And they had every reason to look at me and to say, well, that's fine, lady. But you know what? You owe us a big apology. Because I had not always been nice to them. I had mocked them. But you know, they didn't. They just looked at me and they said, it's over. It's done. God has created in you a new heart. God has made you a new creation in Him. And that's the person that we want to know. The next day, I decided I would turn in my resignation. I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't have another job. I didn't know what we were going to do. My husband, he was a teacher. I knew I couldn't live on that salary. But I knew that I just had to take a leap of faith, and that I just had to trust God. And it was probably the first time in my life I had ever done that. And so I went to put in my resignation. I gave them a good 5 minutes notice. And I turned everything in. I walked out the door for the last time. And there was a young man who was at the pro-life, he worked for the pro-life office, and he had come out to be on the sidewalk whenever I left for the last time, just to make sure I was able to leave without any incident. And he was standing there, and I was walking out, and I waved at him, and I told him I would be at their office the next day. And I pulled out of that parking lot for the last time, and I took a left. And he didn't know that I could see him, and he didn't know that I was looking at him, but I watched him in my rearview mirror. I watched him just put his arms in the air and fall to his knees. Because you know what? There had to be times where they looked at me and they said, you know, God, why do you have us praying for this woman? She's never going to leave. She's rude to us. She mocks us. She's terrible to us. She's never going to leave. Why do you keep having us pray for this woman? She's getting awards. She's getting promotions. She's never going to leave. And then one day I did. You see, I'm standing in front of you today as a testament to the power of conversion. You see, no one is beyond the power of conversion because no one is beyond the power of Christ. And that's what this movement has to be about. You see, I love pro-life legislation. I'm going to be at the Supreme Court in 2 days. I love doing that. But see, guys, my goal is not simply to make abortion illegal. My goal is to make abortion unthinkable. But how do we do that? Well, it has to come, there has to be a paradigm shift, right? One from a culture of death to a culture of life. And how does that happen? It happens through conversion. It happens through education. It happens through our perseverance. See, I believe that the culture of death exists today in our society because people have become terrified of suffering. Because we're not just talking about abortion here. We're talking about many different things. We're talking about assisted suicide. Why does assisted suicide, why does euthanasia exist? Because when people get sick, we don't want them to suffer. So we'll just kill them before they suffer. Why does abortion exist? Well, because if a woman is not ready to have a baby, we don't want her to have to suffer with that consequence. So we just kill the baby. Or, you know, if the woman is not properly equipped to be a mother, we don't want the baby to suffer. So instead of living a time of suffering, then we just kill the baby. We have forgotten the purpose and the joy of redemptive suffering. Because we live in a prosperity gospel time. If you pray enough, you'll be healed. If you do enough nice things, nothing bad will happen to you. If you type amen on Facebook enough times, God's going to bless you. Let me tell you something, God's not a slot machine. It doesn't work like that. You don't keep putting in coins and hoping that you're just going to be blessed for the rest of your life. There will be trials. There will be suffering. And we are not to run from that suffering. We are to embrace it. We are to remember why this is happening to us. We are to suffer with joy. We are to take our sufferings and we are to put it at the feet of Christ. But we don't want to do that. We just want to get rid of the problem. That is the core of what's taking place today inside of our society. So I don't know why you're here tonight. I don't know what draws you into the pro-life movement, but I will tell you this. This is not your pro-life activity for the year. It's a good start, and I'm so thankful that you're here, but this isn't it. Because every day, babies are dying in this country. Like I said, over 3,000 a day. A baby dies in the United States every 24 seconds. Abortions are performed in the United States up until the date of birth. There are 5 physicians in the United States who will abort babies up until 32 weeks. There is 1 in Colorado who will abort babies up until the date of their birth for any reason at all, or for no reason at all. This is the time that we are living in. And tonight, I'm asking you to make a commitment to do something. To do something better than what I did, not to just stand there when injustice is presented right in front of your face, but to act. And yes, we have to pray, but guys, it has to go beyond our prayer life. Because people will come to me and they'll say, oh, but I'm doing enough. I'm praying. And what I say back to these people is, listen, if you are praying and that prayer does not move you to action, then I'm questioning the sincerity of your prayer life. This is too important. This is literally life or death. But I am here to tell you that what we are doing cumulatively, it's working. Look at what's happened in your state. You're now down to 2 abortion facilities. And Elise Hogan, the head of NARAL, she emailed and said that you guys were actually down to 1. So maybe she knows something that we don't know. But think about the lives that will be saved because of perseverance. Because of people who are working so hard in your state to save these lives. Think of the women whose lives will be changed because they didn't make that regrettable decision. Now is the time. And if you ever doubt that, conversion really happens, that it is real, I want you to think about this. 3 years ago, I started a nonprofit organization called And Then There Were None. And we started it because I thought surely that there were people inside the abortion industry who were like me, who wanted to leave, but they didn't know where else to go. And maybe they were single parents. Maybe they couldn't just up and quit their job without another plan in place. And so I thought, certainly there are people like that in the abortion industry. When we made our strategic plan for this ministry, we thought that if we had 10 abortion clinic workers leave the industry a year, that would be like amazing, overwhelming success for us. So we are in this 3 years. We should have about 30 clinic workers who have left. Well, in the past 3 years, we have helped 210 abortion clinic workers leave the industry. And out of that 210, 6 of them were full-time abortionists who put down their instruments and now fight to defend life. And 2 of those out of the 210 actually came from the Delta Clinic a couple of years ago. And they've been working with Louisiana officials to try to give them information to keep these clinics closed down and to give them information about other abortion facilities here in the state of Louisiana. Guys, it's working. But we have to be a part of the effort, every single one of us. And we are in an election season, and I'm not going to tell you who to vote for, except don't vote for Donald Trump. But I'm not going to tell you to vote for. But I will say this, there is no issue more important than the fundamental right to life. There's none. I mean, we can worry about the economy, we can worry about taxes, we can worry about that, but God is not going to bless our nation. God is not going to take care of our economy. He's not going to take care of these issues that are presenting right in front of our face. He's not going to take care of that as long as we are killing over 3,000 innocent children every single day. I mean, let's be real. We sing all the time, God bless America. Why? Why would he bless this country? Look at what we're doing to his creation. I've thought about all the sins that we commit. And I got to tell you, I can't think of anything that must hurt the heart of God more than abortion. Because God gives women this precious, perfect gift. And he knows us so intimately. The Bible says he knows every hair on our head. I mean, that is love. He loves us so much. A love that, we love our kids and we love people unconditionally, but we don't even understand the type of love that he has for us. We can't even comprehend it. And here he gives us this gift, and we take that gift and we throw it away like trash. I can't think of anything that must hurt his heart more than that. But now is the time. Now is the time for us to rise up and to do everything that we can to end this tragedy in our nation. And it will happen one heart, one mind, one woman, one child at a time. And it will happen because of us. People tell me, they say, oh, Abby, I don't know. I don't know if we're ever going to end this. Look, they've got Bill Clinton and Bill Gates and stacks of bills. But I have to remind people, it doesn't matter who they have on their side or how much money they have on their side. Because we have the number one guy on our side, and that's Jesus Christ, and we will win this battle. Thank you so much, and God bless you.